Hey everyone, this is Raja from Charger Games and welcome back to this video. So in this section, we're going to build a simple 2D tap shooter game for our Android devices. So before we get started, let's take a look at the game and check out the gameplay of the game. So here, as you can see, I have the Android device simulator opened and here I have the game opened. So if I click on play, you will see that whenever I click on play, you'll see that we have this tap to start. That means if I tap on the screen or touch on the screen, the game will get started. And then I need to shoot these things. So whenever I click on start, the game starts. And now I need to shoot this target by clicking on them or tapping on them. And if I miss any target, the game will simply get restarted. And then I need to start playing the game again. So let me go ahead and try to click some. And if I miss anyone, and you will see the game gets restarted. And now we are back to the menu screen. We can click on tap to start the game again. So this is how this endless tapping game works, and it looks pretty cool on mobile devices. So I hope you're excited to build this game with me. So let's get started. Hey everyone, this is Raja from Charger Games and welcome back to this video. So in this section, we're going to start building a 2D tap shooting game for Android. So let's get started. So as you can see, I have my Unity Hub opened. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and click on new project to create a new project. From here, I'm going to select Unity 6 or whatever version you want to use. You can use that because this code will work for most Unity versions that you have. Then from the templates, you can either use Universal 2D Core or you can use 2D Mobile Core. If you don't have any of these versions, you can simply click on that version and from here simply click on download template to download that template. Now in this case, I'm going to use this 2D Mobile Core version. For the project name, let's give it a name like Tap Shooter 2D. Okay, and the location should be this one. And then from here, I'm going to disconnect from Unity Cloud because we don't need that. So once you have done that, now you can simply click on create project to create a new project. Alright, so now as you can see, Unity is creating the project. Let's wait for the project to be created and then we can start coding our game. Alright, so now as you can see, we have a new empty 2D Unity project opened up here. So this is how it looks like. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go to this file, build profiles, and I can change this to Android and then click on simply switch platform. Now in your case, if you are building this game for Windows, you can simply skip this step because this game will work for Windows as well, for web as well, or any other platform as well. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select Android and click on switch platform to switch the game to Android platform. Apply. Alright, so now as you can see, our current build platform has been changed to Android. So now we are ready to build games for Android. Now from the resolution, I'm going to go ahead and select this 16:9 portrait. So this is how our game will look like. Now here, as you can see, we have this sample scene. Inside the assets folder, we have this scenes folder. Inside that, we have this sample scene. I'm going to go ahead and simply rename this one to game. Alright. Now inside the assets folder, I'm going to go ahead and create a few new folders. So I'm going to right click, create a new folder, and I'm going to name this one scripts. Then I'm going to go ahead and create another new folder here, and I'm going to name this one sprites. And one last folder I'm going to create here, and I'm going to name this one prefab. Okay, so scripts, sprites, and prefab. These are the three new folders that we have created here. Now I'm going to go ahead and import some of the sprites that we have in this game. So let's go and double click to open up the sprites folder. And inside that, I'm going to drag and drop some of the sprites that we have here. So I'm going to use this one, this one, this one, and this one. So I'm going to drag and drop these sprites inside the sprites folder to import them into our project. Now I have downloaded this sprite from gameart2d.com, this sprite from the kenny.nl website, and these two sprites I have created by myself. Okay, so you can go ahead and use your own sprites or you can download these sprites from the respective websites as well. Alright, so with that done, now I'm going to simply go ahead and drag and drop our background to this hierarchy. So drag and drop the BG or background to the hierarchy right here. And as you can see, this is how our background looks like by default. But this is not something that we want. We want the background to fill the whole mobile screen. To do that, I'm going to go to the sprites folder, select the BG, And from the pixels per units, let's set it to, let's say 60. It's still not enough. Let's set it to 40. Let's try 40 this time. I think 60 should be good. So let's set it to 60 and click on apply. All right. So this is how our game should look like and the game background should look like. Okay. So with that done, now our game and the background is ready. Next, what we need to do is we need to import our target sprite and add all the features to it so that we can start building the game. Okay. So now I'm going to simply drag and drop our target sprite here. And as you can see, this is how the target sprite looks like. Let's go and rename this one to target so that we can easily understand where do we have. So this is our target sprite. So what do we want is whenever the target sprite gets spawned in the game, this sprite should go from up to down, and then we need to try to shoot this sprite. To do all these things, first of all, you're going to select the target, go to add component, go to physics 2D, and from here we're going to add a rigid body 2D component. So let's select this rigid body 2D. So now this one has this gravity. So now whenever we click on play, let's go and move it up a little bit. And now whenever we click on play, you will see it will go down just like this. So what we want is we want to make it a little bit slower than how it falls down. So that's why we're going to change the gravity scale from 1 to, let's say, 0.3 or something like that. Depending on your game, you can change it to whatever value you want. Okay, because if it is too fast, then we will not be able to shoot it or click it like this. Okay, so now that we have set up the rigid body and the gravity scale, now we want to detect collisions so that whenever we tap or touch on this, it can detect the collision. For that, we're going to go to add component, physics 2D, and we're going to add a circle collider 2D. And where is that? Let's try to find the circle collider 2D. So this is the circle collider 2D that you're going to use. So let's click on that. And as you can see here, we have this circle collider 2D. So now if you zoom in, you can see that here we have some green outline, which is the circle collider 2D, and it will help this target to detect the collisions whenever we tap on it or whenever we click on it. Okay. So now if I click on play, as you can see, the target falls down, and now it also has a collider. So it is ready to be shot. The last thing we're going to do is, since we're going to reuse this target again and again and again, what we're going to do is we're going to use it as a prefab. So inside the prefab folder, I'm going to drag and drop our target right here. So as you can see, it has become blue now. That means it is a prefab game object. A prefab is something that we can use again and again. So even if we delete it from the hierarchy, it still has all the features that we have given it. So now we can simply drag and drop it here. As you can see, it has all the features that we have added. So a prefab is a game object that we can reuse again and again. And in this case, we're going to reuse the target again and again because we're going to spawn it and then we're going to show it. Okay. So this is it for this video. In this video, we have set up our project and we also learned how to create this target game object. Next, we're going to add some code to detect collisions so that we can shoot the target, and then we're going to add other features to the game as well. So I'm going to see you in the next video very soon. Hello and welcome back to this video. So now that we have created our target prefab and also we have set up our background, it's time to write some code so that we can destroy our target and we can increment our score as well. So let's get started. So inside our scripts folder, I'm going to right click, create a new mono behavior script, and I'm going to name this one target. All right. So here we have our target script. Now I'm going to select my target and then drag and drop our script over here. And as you can see, it says can't add script component target because the script cannot be found. Okay, that's because it is simply loading. So let it load first and then we can do all these things. So now I think everything has been loaded. Now let's drag and drop the target right here. And as you can see, now the target script has been attached to this target. And if you remember, this is a prefab. So whatever change we make sure we apply all these changes so that the changes gets applied to the prefab. Okay, so you can either do it here or you can directly do it inside the prefab folder to the prefab as well. Okay, as you can see in the prefab, the change has not been applied. That means the script has not been attached here. Now if I select this target, and from the overrides, if I click on apply all, now you will see that this prefab folder, we have this target script attached. Okay, so let's select this target, and here we have the target script attached. Let's double click to open it up in Visual Studio. Alright, so here we have the target script. So here, first of all, what we're going to do is whenever we want to touch or tap over this target, we want to destroy the target, and then we want to increment the score. For that, we need to simply call this void on mouse down function. And this on mouse down function gets called whenever we tap our mouse over any game object, or we touch our finger over that game object in our mobile devices, or do any kind of tapping or touching on that object. Okay, so whenever we touch this target, this on mouse down function will get called, and here what we need to do is we need to simply destroy the game object or destroy this target. To do that, we're going to simply write destroy, and within that we're going to write target. So whenever we tap on this object, we want to immediately destroy this target. Not target, actually, here we need to write game object. Okay, so that is the target. Other than that, whenever we destroy the game object, before that we need to increment the score. Currently we don't have any function to increment our score, but later on when we write that function, we're going to increment the score right here. Now other than that, we need to do another thing. Whenever our target goes below the screen, that means we have missed the target. In that case, we want to say game over and restart the game. Okay, so in order to check that, here we're going to say if transform dot position dot y is less than equals to let's say -6f or something like that, then we want to simply say game over and restart the game. Okay, so currently we don't have any code to write this game over or call this game over function, but later on whenever we write code for this game over function, we're going to call that right from here. Okay, so these are the two things that we needed here, and we have already done that. So for now, let's go and save this script and now go back to Unity. So now we are back inside of Unity, and as you can see here we have the target, and here we have the target. So let's go and click on play to see how this is working. So if I go ahead and click on target, and I have missed it, so let's try it one more time. So click on it, and if I click on it, as you can see, as soon as I click on it, the target gets destroyed. Okay, so the target script is ready, and now we can destroy the target. Now all we have to do is we need to select the target, and from the top, from the overrides, simply click on apply. Currently we don't have any changes, so that is why it's not showing up here. Make sure you apply all the changes if you make any changes to any other object in the hierarchy other than inside the prefab. Okay, so now our target is ready. Now next what you're going to do is we're going to spawn the targets, increment our score, and create our menu systems as well. So we're going to do all that in the next videos, and I'm going to see you in the next videos very soon. Hey everyone, welcome back to this video. So now we're going to create our game manager, which is going to control the whole game, restart the game, and set the game over condition, increment the scores, and do all the necessary things. So let's get started. So first of all, here I'm going to create a new empty game object, and I'm going to name this one game manager. All right, and now inside the scripts folder, I'm going to right click, create a new mono behavior script, and I'm going to name this one game manager as well. Alright, so now I'm going to select the game manager game object and drag and drop the game manager script over this one. Now I'm going to double click to open it up in Visual Studio. And now inside the game manager, first of all, we'll need a static public instance using which we can easily call any public function of the game manager from any other script, because we will have all the necessary controls inside this game manager. So we are going to make it a public static instance so that we can easily call any of the functions of the game manager from other places of our game. Okay, to do that, here we're going to write public static game manager instance. Okay, and now here inside the awake function, we're going to create the awake function which gets called even before start. Here we're going to say instance equals this. Okay, so here we are simply setting the instance variable to the current game object or the current instance of this script. Now this might look a little bit complicated at first, but understand that this is an easier way to call any function of this game manager from any other script or any other part of the game very easily. Okay, so now that we have done this, now here we're going to create some functions. First of all, here we're going to create this game over function, and make sure you write public before writing any functions, otherwise we cannot call it from other scripts. So you're going to write public void game over. This is the function that is responsible for having the game over. Then you're going to create another function, public void game start. Okay, then we will need another function here, which will be public void score up, public void score up. So this will be responsible for checking the score and incrementing the score and printing the score on screen as well. So currently we have all these three functions. Later on we might need some more. For now, inside the game over function, what you're going to do is we're going to simply restart the game. So whenever the game over function gets called, we want to simply restart the game. And in order to restart the game or reload the scene, we need to add another namespace on top of our code. So here we're going to write using Unity engine dot scene management. So just by writing this line of code, now we can use any of the functions from this scene management class, and now from the scene management namespace, and now we can easily restart our game or reload our scene. So here inside the game over, what you're gonna say is scene manager dot load scene, and inside that, within quotations, we're going to write the name of the scene that we want to reload. And if you remember, we have renamed our scene to game. So you need to write it exactly as you have named it in the editor here, and then end it with a semicolon. So now whenever this game over function gets called, Unity will restart the game or reload this game scene again. Now here, let's go and create another variable, and we're going to name this one int score, and initially we're going to set it to 0, and whenever our score up function gets called, here we're going to simply write score plus plus. That means the value of our score will get incremented. For now, let's go and try to print it on the console so that we can see if our score is incrementing at all or not. Okay, so now that we have this score up function and the game start and the game over function, now let's go to the target script, and as you can see here, whenever our position is less than -6f, we want to call the game over function. So here, instead of the comment, here we're going to simply call the game over function. In order to call the game over function from the game manager class, we're going to simply write game manager dot instance dot game over. So this is the simplest way to call any function from the game manager class easily from other scripts by using this public static instance. Okay, the same way, whenever we tap on the object, before destroying the object, we want to increment the score. So for that, we're going to call the game manager dot instance dot score up function. Okay, so now from here we are calling these two functions, which will do all the necessary things whenever we tap on the object or whenever the game needs to be restarted. So now that the things are ready, let's go and save this and go back to Unity to check if these are working. Alright, so now as you can see inside the game manager, we have all the necessary code. So now let's try to play this game. So now if I click on play, now whenever I tap on this object, as you can see now our score has become 1, and now as you can see 1 has been printed on the console. That means our score has been incremented to 1. And now if I go ahead and miss the target and the target goes below the screen, it will go ahead and restart the scene one more time. So let's go and see that. So if I click on play, I miss the target, it goes below, and as you can see, automatically the game gets restarted and the target gets over here once again. And as you can see here, the game gets restarted. Okay, so this way both of our codes are working and our game manager, the basic code of our game manager is ready. Next, we're going to add a lot more features to the game, and I'm going to see you in the next video very soon. Hey everyone, welcome back to this video. So now that we have the game manager ready, now we're gonna create some mechanisms so that we can randomly spawn this object again and again and again so that we have a playable game. So we're gonna do that in this video. So let's get started. So first of all, in the game manager, I'm gonna double click to open up the game manager. And inside the game manager script, first of all, we need to create a few variables because we need those things to actually spawn the game objects. First of all, we're going to create a public game object variable, and we're going to name this game object our target. Okay, so this is the target game object which we're going to spawn again and again. Next, what we need to do is build a position where we want to spawn our game object. Okay, and we're gonna use the max and minimum position because we want to spawn the game objects only within the screen, not beyond the screen. So for that, here we're gonna write public float, and we're gonna write max pose. Okay, so this is the maximum position on the left and right of our screen where we want to spawn the game object, because if we spawn the game object beyond that point, then we cannot see it in the game. And what's the point if we cannot see it in the game? Okay, so that is why we have a variable which will detect the maximum position of the game object. Next, we need a public float spawn rate. So this is the rate at which we want to spawn the game object. Okay, we don't want to spawn it too fast nor too slow, and that is why we want to create this spawn rate variable, and according to this rate we want to spawn the game object. And finally, we need a public transform spawn point. So this is the point in our game, or this is the position in our game from where we want to start spawning the game objects. Okay, so now that we have these things ready, now it's time to write some code. So here we're going to create a new function which will be void spawn target, and this will be responsible for spawning one single game object into the scene. Okay, so now inside the spawn target function, what we're going to do is we're going to detect a random point on the screen, and then we want to spawn the game object on that point. Now before doing anything, let me go ahead and go back to Unity and show you how we're gonna do it. Alright, so here inside Unity, first of all, let me go ahead and move the target a little bit downwards. Okay, so first of all, here we're gonna create a new empty game object, and we're gonna name this one, let's say, spawn point. So this is the point from where we want to start spawning our game objects. And if you want, you can also give it a icon so that you can easily see it in the scene view, something like this or something like this. Okay, all right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the spawn point upwards, a little bit upwards from the screen view. So if you take a look at the camera, if you select the camera, you will see this is the camera view. You can also disable the background for now if it is making a problem. So as you can see, this is the area of the camera, and this white outline is the area of the camera, and this spawn point is here. So we are positioning it a little bit upwards from our camera view. So this is the point from where we want to spawn our targets, but we don't want to spawn all the targets at that point. Okay, because that will be very boring game. So we want to spawn some targets from here, some from here, some from here, some from here, some from here. So we want to spawn the targets from random point, but we don't need to randomize the Y position. We only need to randomize the X position. So the Y position will always be here, the Z position will always be here, only the X position will be randomized. And how much it should be randomized? Let's see. So the X position, the minimum X position should be something like this, and as you can see it is minus 1.92, and the maximum exposition should be something like this, that is minus 1.99. So I think 1.95, something like this, should be the maximum point, and minus 1.95 should be the minimum point. So using these two values, we can set 1.95 as the max point or the max exposition or the max position or to spawn this game object. Okay, so let's give it to 0. So now that we have our spawn point ready, and now that we have understood the logic, let's go and finish the code. So inside the game manager, let's go and open it up one more time. So inside the spawn target, first of all, we're going to create a new vector3 spawn pose, and the spawn pose will be our spawn point dot position. And if you remember, this spawn point is a transform game object inside which we will drag and drop our spawn point game object on the scene, and then from here we are getting the position of that spawn point game object. Once that's done, now we need to only randomize the X position. Okay, and how much we want to randomize it? To do that, first of all, here we're going to write spawn pose dot X equals random dot range. And what's going to be the range? The minimum of the range is going to be our max pose minus, and the maximum of that point should be our max pose plus. Okay, so if the value of our max pose is 1.95, then the minimum value will be minus 1.95 and the maximum value will be plus 1.95. So this function will create a random value between minus 1.95 and plus 1.95. So anywhere on our screen, it will create a random value, and it will store that random value inside the X position of our spawn pose variable. So now all we need to do is we need to spawn our target at this spawn pose position, and everything will be good to go because we have already added random point or the random value to the X position of this spawn pose variable. Okay, so with that done, now here we need to do is instantiate. And what do we want to instantiate? We want to instantiate the target game object. And at which position we want to instantiate it? We want to instantiate it at the spawn pose. And what will be the rotation? The rotation will be quaternion dot identity. That means we don't want any other external rotation. Alright, so whenever now the spawn target function will get called, it will automatically spawn a new target game object at a random X point at this spawn position with a default rotation. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need to repeatedly call this spawn target function so that the targets get spawned again and again and again at random points. For that, inside the game start function, here we're going to simply write invoke repeating. Invoke repeating means when we want to call a function again and again repeatedly, then we call this invoke repeating function. Inside that, within quotations, we need to write spawn target because this is the function that we want to call again and again. After that, we need to write after how much time we want to start calling this invoke repeating. So here we're going to write 1f. That means after 1 second, we want to call this function repeatedly. And then we need to pass a spawn rate or repeat rate at which the function will get called again and again. Here we're going to write the spawn rate variable that we have created already. Okay, so with that done, now things are pretty much ready. Now we need to simply call this game start function inside our start. So here we're going to call game start function. So if we do this, now whenever our game starts, inside the start function, the game start gets called, and in that case, the spawn target gets called again and again. So the targets will be spawning again and again repeatedly. So now with that done, now I'm going to simply save this script and then I'm going to go back to Unity. And now if I select the game manager, as you can see here, we have a lot of references to be added. So inside the target, I'm going to drag and drop the target game object from our prefab folder. So from the prefab, I'm going to drag and drop the target game object. Okay. Now inside the max pose, I want to write 1.95 or anything that we have calculated. I think 1.95 should be good. Let me check it one more time. So the X position 1.95. Yeah, this seems good. So 1.95 should be good. Okay, so the spawn point, so the max pose is 1.95, and the spawn rate is something you can give according to your own wish, how much repeatedly you want to call your target. So here let's give it a spawn rate of 0.5, and at the spawn point we're going to drag and drop this spawn point reference right over here. Now simply press Ctrl S to save this script and save the project. And now I'm gonna simply disable this target because we don't need it, because again and again some more targets will get spawned. So now if I click on play, when the game starts, you will see that automatically the targets are getting spawned again and again and again from the top. So the targets are getting spawned again and again, and you will see they are spawning, and I can go ahead and click them and destroy them. And if any of the targets reach the bottom, then the game will get restarted. Okay, and I can increment the score as well by actually destroying the targets. So whenever I click on destroy the targets, the score will get incremented, and as you can see, the score increment gets printed on the console like 1 and 2. Alright, so now we are able to spawn the targets, and we can spawn the targets again and again repeatedly at random positions. Next, we need to find a way so that we can restart the game and show the score on the screen, and we can create a main menu of the game. So we're going to do all those things in the next videos, and I'm going to see you in the next videos. Hello and welcome back to this video. So in this video, let's start and print the score on our screen. So whenever we tap our game object, we should print the score on the screen. So let's get started. So first of all, here I'm going to go ahead and go to UI and click on this Text Mesh Pro. So this will create a new Text Mesh Pro text, and it will ask me to import the Text Mesh Pro essentials. So I'm going to simply click on this import TMP essentials. So now the Text Mesh Pro features have been imported, and as you can see, we have a new text right here. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to rename this text to score, and then here as you can see we have the canvas, and if you double click, as you can see, the canvas is pretty big, just like this. So what you're going to do is from the canvas, make sure this screen space overlay is selected. Next, what you're going to do is we're going to set the UI scale mode to scale with screen size, so that our UI gets scaled with different screen sizes. And for the reference resolution, we're going to give 1080 by 1920. Okay, so this is the reference resolution, and for the match, we can write 0.5 so that our UI gets matched with the height and width of the screen as well. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to select the score, and from the rect transform, I'm going to reset it so that it comes to the center of our screen. So now as you can see, this is the text. Now I can select this UI rect tool and drag these handles to make the text bigger or smaller. I think I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, something like this, and a little bit bigger on this axis as well. And now I can simply move out or zoom out by rotating my mouse wheel, and then I can simply position it somewhere like this on the screen. Okay, so once that's done, as you can see, currently it is centered on the screen. Now I'm going to change the text inputs value to 0, because that's what our score will be. And from the font size, I can simply go ahead and make it much bigger than how it is. So let's make it something like 40, and as you can see, you cannot see 40 because our score text object is not big enough. So let's go ahead and make it something like this. So now as you can see, it is on the top right or top left corner of the screen, of the, not on the screen, top left corner of the UI text box. So what we're going to do is we're going to position it at the center. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and from the alignment, make it aligned to the center horizontally and vertically as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and increment the font size and make it much bigger than how it is. So I think something like 300 should be okay. 300 should be okay. So now whenever the score increments from 0 to 10, 10, 100, 1000, 10,000, things should look good. So this is how our score should look like whenever the game runs. I think I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Let's say 350, something like this should be good. Now from the vertex color, I can go ahead and give it a yellow-like color just to make it look cooler. Okay, and if you want, you can also go ahead and change its alpha value to something like this. But I think I'm going to make it full alpha, something like this. And then I'm going to put it a little bit on the top, somewhere like this. I think this should be the perfect position for our score, and this is where our score will be situated. So now that we have set up the UI of the score, now it's time to update the UI whenever we click on the target game objects. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and go to Game Manager and double click to open up the Game Manager script. So let's double click to open it up. And now here we need some references. First of all, we need to import the Text Mesh Pro namespace so that we can use all the functions of the Text Mesh Pro game objects. So here we're going to write using TM Pro. Okay. Now here we need to create a reference to the score text game object. For that we're going to write public Text Mesh Pro UGUI score text. Okay, so this is our score text reference. Now what we're going to do is whenever the score is up, that means whenever we are incrementing the score, then after incrementing the score, we're going to change or update the score UI text as well. So for that, here we're going to write score text dot text equals score dot toString. If you remember, this score is an integer variable, and we are incrementing the value of this score text whenever we are calling this score up function. Because our score text object is a string, so that is why we need to convert this score to a string game object. After that, we can assign the value to our score text property, and then it will be updated on the screen. So now let's go and save this and go back to Unity. And now if I go ahead and click on play, so now if you see, whenever I go ahead and tap on these targets, the score should get incremented, but it's not, because we are getting a null reference exception here. As you can see, it is giving us a null reference exception, and that is because we have not assigned our score text object to this game manager. So let's go and drag and drop our score right over to our score text, and now things should look pretty good. So now if I go ahead and click on play, you will see now the object gets spawned, and if I click on it, the score gets updated like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this way the game goes on. Okay, so this way the game is working and our score is getting printed and the obstacles are getting spawned randomly on random position of a screen. So now that we have done this, now all we need to do is we need to create a main menu and restart the game and start the game. So we're going to do that in the next videos. Alright, so now that we have the score ready, let's go ahead and quickly create our main menu. So let's get started. So to create our main menu, we're going to create our menu UI. So inside our canvas, I'm going to right click, go to UI and create a new image. So this is the image which will be the main game UI or the main title text of our game. So we're going to name this one, let's say title text. Okay. And now inside the title text, inside the source image component, we're going to drag and drop our title text from our scripts folder, from our sprites folder. So if you remember, in our sprites folder, I have created this tab shooter title text. And if you want, you can create another title text by yourself. So this is the one that I have created in Photoshop. So I'm going to drag and drop this tab shooter over here inside the source image. And then I'm going to click on this set native size. And once I do that, as you can see, now it has become a little bit bigger. So now I can go ahead and drag it to make it bigger and smaller. But instead of doing this, I'm going to press the Alt key on my keyboard and Shift key as well. And then I'm going to drag this one. So Shift and Alt and drag this So this is the correct way to make it bigger on all different axes. So now this is where our title text should be. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and disable the score. So disable the score. So this is how our title text should look like, something like this. If you want, you can also make it like this, or if you want, you can also position it somewhere like this. But I think I'm going to simply position it right over here. Okay, so the rotation should be 0, and this is where our title text should be positioned. Now we're going to create some more text elements. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and create a new UI image. And as you can see, this image is already getting created as a child of this title text, but let's not do that right now. For now, I'm going to go ahead and click on the canvas, go to UI, create a new image. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and rename it to, let's say, target image. And here I'm going to drag and drop our target sprite and then click on set native size. So this is just for decoration, nothing much. This is just for making the game menu screen look fun. And finally, we're going to create the canvas, go to UI, create another new image, and then I'm going to name it to tap text. And then I'm going to position it somewhere like this. And now inside the tap text, I'm going to drag and drop this tap to start text. So let's go ahead and drag and drop this tap to start text. And this is how our tap text looks like. Now, as you can see here, we have only the T showing up, but we have tap to start all the text elements in this image. So what's the problem? The problem is that the image has been imported as sprite mode single probably or multiple. So if you have this in multiple, you can simply click on this single. If you have this single, click on this multiple and then click on apply. Let's try to select the single mode and then click on apply. And now as you can see, the tap text is gone. Let me go ahead and drag it one more time. And as you can see, now it looks pretty good. Okay, so by default, probably it will be imported as multiple. If that doesn't work, simply select the text from the sprites folder and change the sprite mode to single and then click on apply. All right, so now I'm going to select the tap text. And as you can see, now it looks pretty good. Now I'm going to click on the set native size and now it has become bigger. Okay, so now I'm going to select this rect selection tool and just like before, pressing the Shift and Alt key, I'm going to make it look, I'm going to drag it to make it a little bit bigger than how it is. If I can actually click it. So something like this should be okay. All right. So this is our tap to start text that should be shown on our screen whenever the game starts. Okay. So these are the three main menu elements of our game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the tap text, and by pressing the control key, I'm going to select the target image. So both of these things are selected. Now I'm going to drag and drop them over this title text. Okay. So now both of them are child of this title text element. So what's going to happen is now whenever we go from main menu to the game, we just simply need to disable this title text and enable this score text. And whenever we go from the game scene to the menu scene, we're going to disable the score text and then we're going to enable the title text. All right. So this way we can easily go from menu to the score and score to the menu easily. So this is how we have actually set up the menu screen and the menu game objects. Next, we need to add some functionality so that whenever we tap, our game starts, and whenever we restart, the menu gets shown here once again. So we're going to do that next. Hey everyone, welcome back to this video. So now that we have our menu UI ready, it's time to add the functionality so that whenever we click on this menu after starting the game actually gets started. And whenever the game starts, this menu UI gets disabled and the score UI gets enabled. And whenever we go or whenever the game over happens, the score gets disabled and the menu UI gets enabled once again. Okay, so to do that, what I need to do is at the beginning, we don't want to start the game. Whenever we click on play, we want to show this. Now whenever we click on tap, after that we want to start spawning the game object. As you can see, currently whenever we click on play, automatically the objects get spawned, but that's not something that we want. In the beginning, we want to show this tap shooter, tap to start, all these things, and whenever we click on this here, then we want to start spawning the game objects, and at that time we want to make all these things disabled and enable the score. So let's go and do that in our script. So let's go and open up the game manager script. And now inside the game manager script, what you're going to do is, first of all, here we're going to create another new variable. We're going to call it bool game started. Okay, so this variable will actually check if our game has started or not, and in the beginning, of course, it will stay false. Now what's going to happen is, inside the start, we are not going to call this game start function. We're not going to call it from the start. So let's go and comment it out. Inside the update, we're going to check if game has not started and if we have clicked on the screen. So if the game has not started and we have clicked on the screen, only then we want to start the game. And if the game has started and then again we click the game, of course we don't want to restart it again. We want to restart it only once. So inside the update, we're going to say if input dot get mouse button down 0. That means if we have tapped on our screen, so this is the condition, write it exactly like this. If we have tapped or touched on our screen, and to represent and, we're going to write two ampersand signs. That means we are joining two different conditions. So if we have tapped or touched on our screen and not game started, that means if game started is equal to false, that means our game has not started yet. So if we are tapping on the screen and the game has not been started, only then we're going to call this game start function. Only then we're going to call this game start function. Okay, and after that we're going to write game started variable. We're going to set the game started variable to true, because our game has been started. And if we don't set it to true, then this condition will get true again and we will again restart the game. So because we want to do it only once, that is why in the beginning we are making the game started variable to false, and here we are checking if the game started is false and we are tapping on the screen, then we want to call the game start function, and after that we are making the game started variable is equal to true. So now in the update, if it again checks this condition, whenever I click on it, this condition will be true and the game started will be false again. Okay, so here here we need to make it here we will be true. So because the game started is true, so this condition will not be true. Game started is not false, it is true. That is why our game will not get started again. It will only happen once whenever we start the game, okay, or whenever we tap for the first time on the screen. Okay, so with that done, now whenever we tap on the screen for the very first time, the game start function will get called and the game started will be true and the game will start spawning the game objects. So now what we need to do is, whenever the game start happens, we need to actually enable the score text and disable the menu UI game objects. Okay, so for that, here let's go and create some references. So first of all, you're going to create public game object and we're going to name this one menu UI. Okay, so this is our menu UI game object. So whenever our game starts, we want to disable our menu UI and we want to enable our score text. Okay, so whenever our game starts, here we're gonna say menu UI dot set active to false. So whenever our game starts, we want to disable our menu UI and we want to enable our score text. For that, we already have a reference to the score text. So we're going to say score text dot game object dot set active true. Okay, so whenever the game starts, first of all, we are disabling the menu, we are enabling the score text, and then we are starting to spawn the target game object. Okay, so right now, after writing all these codes, everything should work pretty good. So let's go and save this and go back to Unity to check if everything is working fine or not. Alright, so now we are inside the Unity, and now if I select the game manager, as you can see, it is waiting for a reference to the menu UI. Inside the menu UI, I'm going to drag and drop the title text right here because we have both of these objects as a child of the title text. So if I disable the title text, everything else will be disabled as well. And in the beginning, you need to make sure that you disable the score text because whenever the game starts, then we need to enable it. So with that done, now let's go ahead and click on play. And now as you can see, the game does not start whenever we are here. And if I tap it for the very first time, now you will see the menu is gone, the score is here, and the game gets started, and the game gets restarted, and the game gets started, and the game gets restarted again and again. So things are working pretty fine, and our game is working. Alright, so this way, as you can see, our game is pretty much working. So now let's go ahead and test it in a real mobile console to check how it's working. So I'm going to go to Window, General, Device Simulator, and here I'm going to select this Google Pixel 5, and this is an Android device. So now I'm going to go ahead and click on play, and as you can see, this is our simulator. This is our main menu. I can tap to start the game. The objects are falling. I can simply click on them to destroy them, and if I miss any of them, the game gets restarted. I can again click on it, the game gets started, and then if I click on it, the score increments, and if I miss any of them, the game gets restarted. Alright, so it's pretty fun, and the game is working pretty good. So this is how it's working pretty good on the simulator as well, and it's working everywhere as well. Okay, so our game is ready, and this way we have built a simple, cool, fun 2D tap shooting or target shooting game, anything that you want to say. So this looks pretty good, and I hope you really enjoyed building this game with me. I hope you had a lot of fun. So go ahead and add some more of your features. You can add some more different objects here. You can add some more features. You can add a timer. You can make the speed bigger or smaller, anything that you want to do. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed and learned a lot in this section. So I'm going to see you in another video very soon. Till then, go ahead and start building and keep making awesome games.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss any update.